Isabella Kane, the glamorous Miami gold digger, fooled Dubai's billionaire Sheikh Omar Al-Fahad out of $5 million, thinking she got away with the perfect scam. Until the police closed in, the summer sun glistened over Miami, turning the coastline into a dazzling stretch of gold. Tourists swarmed the beaches. Music from nearby clubs mixed with the sound of waves crashing, and luxury yachts swayed gently in the marinas. The city hummed with life, wealth, and opportunity, and it was here that Isabella Kane made her calculated entrance. She arrived in Miami with nothing but a suitcase, a carefully prepared identity, and a mind brimming with ambition. At first glance, she seemed like any other visitor drawn to the city's vibrant energy. She had the perfect look for Miami: sun-kissed skin, flowing hair, and eyes that hinted at mystery. But behind her polished exterior lay a meticulous plan that had been months in the making. Isabella rented a small apartment in downtown Miami, conveniently located near both the high-end shopping districts and the exclusive social clubs where the city as elite gathered. Each day, she walked along Ocean Drive, attending events and art exhibitions, carefully observing her surroundings and learning the routines of those she planned to manipulate. She spoke to locals with charm and confidence, dropping just enough personal details to appear approachable, but never revealing anything true about her past. She had learned early on that curiosity could be a dangerous thing, and she shielded herself with an aura of sophistication that kept people at just the right distance. Her beauty was her first weapon, but it was her intelligence and patience that made her dangerous. Isabella knew how to read people, how to sense their desires and fears, and how to use that knowledge to her advantage. She had studied Sheikh Omar Al-Fahad from afar for months, analyzing his habits, investments, and weaknesses. Miami was merely the stage for the next act of her plan. Every day she moved with purpose, from the cafes she frequented to the luxury boutiques she visited, crafting the illusion of a wealthy, independent woman who belonged in the city's upper echelon. She smiled at the right moments, laughed at the right jokes, and allowed herself to be seen as someone who had already succeeded. Yet, despite her outward confidence, there were moments of tension. Isabella had perfected the art of maintaining calm under pressure, but even she felt a flicker of anxiety when Miami's crowded streets felt suffocating, or when she noticed the sharp eyes of those who might see through her facade. She spent hours online, ensuring that her digital presence matched the identity she had created, leaving behind carefully curated social media profiles, professional contacts, and even a fabricated network of clients and investors. Each detail had been constructed to appear natural, to make her seem like someone who had earned her place among the cities as wealthy and influential. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Biscayne Bay, Isabella Kane walked along the marina, observing the yachts and the glamorous parties on the water. To the outside world, she was just another woman enjoying the pleasures of Miami. But inside, her mind was focused entirely on the man she intended to target, the $5 million she planned to take, and the empire she was determined to build. This city of sun, wealth, and excess was her playground, and she was ready to begin the game that would change both her life and the life of her unsuspecting victim forever. Isabella Kane's arrival in Miami was only the beginning. The real work started when she made her first contact with Sheikh Omar Al-Fahad. He was a man accustomed to wealth and power, a Dubai businessman whose influence extended across continents. Known for his lavish lifestyle, he had a reputation for acquiring rare and priceless art, often spending millions without hesitation. Isabella knew this, and she knew exactly how to appeal to his vanity and desire for exclusivity. Using carefully researched information, she crafted a persona that combined sophistication, knowledge, and just the right amount of mystery. Through encrypted emails and high-end messaging apps, she began communicating with him, introducing herself as a consultant for elite art collectors with insider access to auctions in Europe and the Middle East. From the very first exchange, Isabella presented herself as a woman of refinement and connections. Her messages were polished and precise, laced with references to obscure artists and private exhibitions that only someone deeply entrenched in the art world could know. Sheikh Omar, flattered by her intelligence and impressed by her apparent expertise, responded with increasing enthusiasm. He shared details of his art investments and occasionally hinted at large sums available for rare acquisitions. Isabella listened carefully, learning his habits, his preferences, and most importantly, his blind spots. She understood that flattery and subtle authority could build trust faster than any contract or legal document. Over the next few weeks, the relationship deepened. Isabella's charm was not limited to her words. She understood the power of presentation. When she appeared on video calls, she was always in elegant settings, with soft lighting, artfully placed objects in the background, and a wardrobe that reflected wealth and taste. Sheikh Omar could not resist being drawn into her world. Every suggestion she made, every piece of advice she offered regarding potential art investments, reinforced the illusion that she was a valuable ally. By the time she proposed her first deal involving millions, he already believed in her credibility completely. The deal itself was simple on the surface, but engineered to mask Isabella's true intentions. She suggested that Sheikh Omar invest in rare European art pieces, supposedly in high demand among collectors in Asia. She promised exclusivity, guaranteed authenticity, and the potential for extraordinary returns. The documents she sent were carefully fabricated: invoices, shipping manifests, and even certifications that looked legitimate to any non-expert. Every detail had been meticulously planned to prevent suspicion and create the illusion of legitimacy. Within days, Sheikh Omar authorized transfers totaling millions of dollars, believing he was securing valuable assets that would multiply his wealth. Isabella's method was not one of brute force or intimidation, but of subtle manipulation and psychological precision. She had studied Sheikh Omar's behavior, understood his ambitions, and tailored her persona to match his expectations. To him, she was more than a consultant. She was a partner, someone who seemed indispensable to his ventures. He did not question her motives or the speed at which the funds were transferred. Meanwhile, Isabella recorded every transaction, every email, and every interaction, knowing that this digital footprint would be crucial if anyone ever questioned the legitimacy of the operation. By the time the first million reached her account, Isabella felt a surge of confidence. Everything was proceeding according to plan, and she allowed herself a brief moment to enjoy the thrill of victory. She knew she was playing a dangerous game, but the elegance with which she manipulated Sheikh Omar made her believe she was untouchable. In her mind, Miami was no longer just a city of sun and glamour. It was a battlefield where intelligence and charm were more powerful than law enforcement or morality. Every smile, every carefully timed message, every document she sent brought her closer to the ultimate prize, $5 million, untethered and untraceable, or so she believed. The heist itself was not a sudden act of greed, but the result of months of meticulous planning. Isabella Kane had constructed a network of shell companies, fake invoices, and offshore accounts long before the first dollar reached her hands. Each element was designed to create layers of legitimacy, to make her actions appear as routine business transactions. She moved with precision, carefully timing every transfer and ensuring that each step would withstand scrutiny, at least for a while. Miami, with its international banks, busy ports, and bustling luxury markets, provided the perfect environment for her scheme. The city's glittering veneer hid a complex undercurrent where money flowed freely, and Isabella exploited this with ease. Once the first significant transfer landed in her account, Isabella began converting it into tangible assets. She purchased a sleek black sports car, the kind that drew admiring glances on Ocean Drive, and a second one for backup, never driving them in the same neighborhood on the same day. Designer boutiques became her playground, and she acquired jewelry that gleamed under the Miami sun, each piece carefully chosen to display her apparent wealth and sophistication. Her apartment in Biscayne Bay transformed from a modest rental into a luxurious penthouse, complete with a skyline view that made her seem untouchable. Every purchase reinforced the illusion that Isabella was not a criminal, but a successful woman living the life she deserved. Yet, the true genius of the heist lay not in the luxury she flaunted, but in the way she disguised the money. Offshore accounts in tax-friendly jurisdictions allowed her to move funds across continents without raising immediate red flags. She used a combination of cryptocurrency and traditional banking channels, creating a labyrinth that even experienced investigators would struggle to navigate. Each layer was designed to protect her identity and maintain plausible deniability. It was a system built not only to steal money, but to make the theft almost invisible, like smoke dispersing in the wind. Isabella's interactions with Sheikh Omar continued with the same polished charm. She sent him updates on the art acquisitions, photographs of galleries and auctions, and carefully crafted reports that made him believe the money was actively working for him. The Sheikh, eager to see results, never questioned the speed or volume of transfers. Isabella's brilliance lay in making the impossible seem ordinary, transforming a multi-million-dollar scam into a seemingly routine business deal. Despite her outward confidence, there were moments of tension. Every time her phone buzzed with a message, or a bank employee asked a routine question, her heart would race. She moved cautiously, never staying in one place for too long, and meticulously deleted any trace of her activity on digital devices. She was living a double life. By day, the sophisticated art consultant. By night, a master of deception. The thrill of the heist was intoxicating, but it also came with a gnawing awareness that one mistake could unravel everything she had built. As the final transfers were completed, Isabella leaned back in her penthouse, surveying the life she had created in a matter of weeks. $5 million stolen, hidden, and untouchable was now under her control. She allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction, convinced that she had executed the perfect crime. Miami's skyline glittered like a treasure chest below her, a reflection of her audacity, her intelligence, and her complete mastery of a world where charm and cunning were more powerful than law or morality. For now, she believed she was untouchable, and nothing could shatter the illusion of control she had so carefully constructed. Despite Isabella Kane's careful planning and meticulous execution, the first cracks in her facade began to appear. Miami, with all its glitz and glamour, had a way of exposing even the most calculated schemes. At first, the signs were subtle: an inquisitive glance from a bank teller, an unexpected inquiry about a recent transfer, a casual question that hinted someone was paying attention. Isabella brushed off these moments with practiced ease, convincing herself that her layers of deception were impermeable. Yet deep down, a sliver of unease began to creep in, a whisper that not everything was as secure as she believed. The first serious threat came in the form of a diligent bank manager at one of Miami's prestigious financial institutions. He noticed a series of transactions coming from Isabella's account that didn't quite fit the pattern of her supposed business. Small inconsistencies, slightly irregular wire routing, repeated transfers just under reporting limits caught his attention. While not conclusive on their own, when combined, they painted a picture that demanded scrutiny. Isabella, confident in her network of offshore accounts and shell companies, remained unaware that her carefully constructed trail was beginning to draw eyes. Meanwhile, across the ocean in Dubai, Sheikh Omar began to feel a gnawing sense of doubt. He had entrusted Isabella with millions of dollars, convinced of her expertise and her legitimacy. But some investments were taking longer than expected to materialize. The photographs she sent, supposedly documenting rare art acquisitions, began to feel staged, overly polished, almost too perfect. Questions arose, first as quiet curiosity, then as pointed inquiries that demanded answers. Sheikh Omar, a man accustomed to precision and control, could not ignore the feeling that something was amiss. Isabella, oblivious to the growing suspicions, continued her life of luxury with increasing abandon. She hosted parties in her penthouse, flaunting designer clothes and expensive watches. Social media became her stage, each post a calculated signal of success and sophistication. Yet each photograph, each tagged location, and each moment of ostentation created a breadcrumb trail that investigators could eventually follow. What she perceived as proof of her genius was, in reality, slowly turning into a map that could lead authorities straight to her door. Even within her own routines, cracks began to form. The constant juggling of multiple accounts, payments, and communications demanded unrelenting focus. A single oversight, a wrong number dialed, a poorly timed email could unravel everything. Isabella had always thrived on control, but Miami was an unpredictable city, and the stakes were higher than ever. Her meticulous attention to detail was being tested by the chaos of her own ambition. Yet she refused to acknowledge the warning signs. In her mind, she had executed the perfect heist. The wealth, the luxury, and the power she wielded seemed untouchable. But unseen forces were converging. Sheikh Omar's suspicion, the watchful eyes of banking officials, and the quiet hum of Miami's investigative networks were closing in. The first whispers of doubt, once easily ignored, were now forming a chorus that could no longer be silenced. What Isabella perceived as triumph was, in reality, the calm before the storm, a storm that would force her to confront the consequences of greed, deception, and the illusion of invincibility. As Isabella Kane's life of luxury continued, she began to feel the growing pressure of the double life she had created. By day, she moved through Miami's elite social circles, attending art exhibitions, gala dinners, and exclusive yacht parties. She wore designer gowns and diamonds that sparkled under the city's neon lights, projecting the image of a sophisticated, successful consultant. Everyone around her saw the glamorous persona, unaware of the calculated deception that fueled it. Behind the elegance, however, Isabella was constantly calculating, monitoring, and manipulating every detail of her operation. The thrill of her success was intertwined with an underlying tension she could never fully escape. By night, the stakes became even higher. Isabella worked tirelessly in the solitude of her penthouse, meticulously erasing digital traces, updating spreadsheets, and transferring funds between accounts with military precision. Every movement was deliberate. One wrong click or forgotten password could unravel the intricate web she had built. The line between her public persona and her private maneuvers blurred as her mind became consumed with the logistics of hiding millions of dollars. She began to notice minor anomalies that, on the surface, seemed insignificant. A delayed email reply from a banker, a curious glance from a passerby, a sudden spike in website traffic for her offshore companies. Each tiny irregularity sent a jolt of anxiety through her, but she pushed it aside, convincing herself that she was untouchable. Despite her careful measures, paranoia crept into her consciousness. She began noticing unfamiliar cars parked near her penthouse, shadows lingering longer than expected on the sidewalks, and anonymous calls that ended in silence. These moments of unease disrupted her carefully orchestrated confidence, yet she refused to let them control her. Every precaution she had taken, from encrypted messaging to fake identities, was meant to keep her shielded from exactly this kind of exposure. She told herself that caution was part of her genius, not a sign of vulnerability. Still, each night, as she reviewed her accounts and transactions, a nagging voice in the back of her mind warned that she could be closer to discovery than she realized. Her relationships became superficial, transactions of information and influence, rather than genuine connections. The luxurious parties and elite circles that had once energized her now felt like a cage, a glittering prison where every move was scrutinized and recorded. The very world she had sought to conquer began to feel like a threat. And yet, for all the pressure and paranoia, Isabella refused to slow down. Each day she balanced her charm, intelligence, and audacity against the looming danger she could not fully see. Miami was no longer just a playground, it had become a battlefield. Every smile, every gesture, every carefully timed message was part of a larger war between freedom and exposure. She was a master manipulator, but the forces closing in were relentless. The wary sheik, the watchful eyes of Miami's banking officials, and the subtle but growing network of observers who might one day unravel her empire. The tension tightened around her like a noose, invisible but ever-present, reminding Isabella Kane that in a world of deception, the thrill of control was always accompanied by the shadow of discovery. Sheikh Omar Al-Fahad was a man who had seen the world and controlled vast fortunes, but the realization that he had been deceived filled him with a mix of anger, disbelief, and determination. Isabella Kane, with her charm and cunning, had managed to extract millions from him under the guise of legitimate art investments. The initial shock soon gave way to resolve. He refused to accept that a stranger, thousands of miles away in Miami, had outsmarted him. With resources at his disposal, he began orchestrating a plan that would ensure she could not disappear without consequence. The sheik hired a seasoned private investigator with a reputation for tracing complex financial networks. This investigator, fluent in digital forensics and international banking systems, began dissecting Isabella's transactions piece by piece. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, and cryptocurrency transfers were mapped, revealing a sophisticated but traceable web. What Isabella had believed to be invisible layers of protection were, in reality, breadcrumb trails leading directly to her. Every transaction, every fake invoice, and every email that had seemed carefully hidden was slowly being pieced together into a coherent pattern. As the investigation progressed, Sheikh Omar's team began to connect other clues, timestamps on emails, IP addresses, and patterns in her communications. The sophistication of the scam had initially blinded them to the simplest truths that even the most intricate deceptions leave traces when millions of dollars are involved. Sheikh Omar, personally invested in the outcome, monitored every report and demanded precision, leaving no detail unchecked. Meanwhile, Isabella remained blissfully unaware of the storm gathering. Her days were still filled with social appearances, gallery visits, and high-end shopping. She believed herself untouchable, confident that her intelligence and careful planning had secured her safety. But subtle signs of scrutiny began creeping into her world. A bank official's repeated questions, an unexpected knock at her penthouse door, and the occasional odd glance from strangers in public spaces began to unsettle her. She brushed off these warnings, convinced they were merely coincidences, yet her subconscious mind registered them as threats she could not entirely ignore. Sheikh Omar's private investigator also employed surveillance. Cameras captured Isabella's movements, her meetings, and her interactions with local businesses. Observing from afar, they built a detailed profile of her routines, habits, and potential vulnerabilities. Each piece of information gathered added to the mounting pressure around her, tightening the invisible net that had begun to close. Miami, a city she had thought of as her playground, was gradually revealing itself as a stage for consequences she had not anticipated. The first time, Isabella's confidence began to falter, replaced by a subtle, gnawing sense of danger. The same city that had allowed her to flaunt her success now seemed watchful, almost alive in its scrutiny. The sheik's retaliation was methodical, deliberate, and invisible, unlike anything she had encountered before. In her pursuit of wealth and power, Isabella had underestimated not just Sheikh Omar's resources, but also the inevitability of consequences in a world where greed leaves tracks. The first cracks in her illusion of invincibility were no longer whispers. They were becoming tangible, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. The moment of reckoning arrived silently, almost imperceptibly. Miami police, acting in coordination with international authorities, had pieced together the intricate web Isabella Kane had woven around herself. Every offshore account, every shell company, every luxury purchase had left faint traces that, when combined, formed a roadmap to her luxurious penthouse overlooking Biscayne Bay. Investigators moved with precision, knowing that the slightest hesitation could allow her to vanish into the city as a labyrinth of streets and shadows. To the world, Isabella was untouchable. To the authorities, she was simply another suspect whose arrogance had made tracking her possible. The raid was swift and methodical. Officers arrived in unmarked vehicles, surrounding the building before any alarm could be raised. Inside, Isabella was immersed in her digital empire, reviewing bank statements, emails, and cryptocurrency transfers. She had always believed her careful measures would keep her ahead of anyone who tried to trace her steps. But in that moment, as she glanced up to see shadows moving along the walls, the first crack of realization struck. The illusion of control she had clung to for months shattered in an instant. Officers entered her penthouse with calm authority. Every corner of her space was meticulously documented. Stacks of paperwork containing fake invoices, lists of shell companies, laptops filled with encrypted data, and luxury items purchased with Sheikh Omar's money. It was a testament to the scale and audacity of her deception. For the first time, Isabella confronted the full weight of what she had done. The glamour, the thrill, and the sense of invincibility that had defined her life for so long evaporated, replaced by the undeniable reality that her freedom was gone. Despite attempts to flee, her options were limited. Miami's streets, once a playground of power and indulgence, had become a trap. Investigators had anticipated every potential exit route, every possible contact who might assist her. The police moved quickly, securing the perimeter and ensuring that there was no avenue for escape. Isabella, who had believed herself the architect of a perfect heist, suddenly realized that her intelligence and charm could not shield her from the consequences of her actions. The media erupted in the hours following her arrest. Headlines across Miami and Dubai painted a picture of audacity and betrayal. The glamorous art consultant who had scammed a Dubai sheik out of $5 million. Social media exploded with images of her penthouse, luxury purchases, and screenshots of her online persona. The story captivated audiences worldwide, a cautionary tale of greed, deception, and the limits of cunning. Isabella's carefully constructed identity, once admired and envied, became evidence against her. Every post, every public appearance, and every photograph that had broadcast her success now reinforced her guilt in the eyes of the public. Sheikh Omar, for his part, experienced a mixture of relief and vindication. The man who had been deceived by charm and ambition now saw justice unfolding with meticulous precision. The private investigator, the authorities, and the coordination between Miami and international law enforcement ensured that Isabella's arrest was not just a capture but a statement. No deception, no matter how elaborate, could escape the reach of accountability. For Isabella Kane, the glamorous world she had crafted crumbled overnight. The penthouse, the luxury cars, the designer jewelry, everything she had believed was a symbol of her genius was now evidence of her downfall. The thrill, the power, and the illusion of control had evaporated, leaving only the cold reality of confinement and consequence. The city that had once promised her opportunity had delivered judgment, and there was no longer any room for escape. The trial of Isabella Kane became an international spectacle, capturing attention in Miami, Dubai, and beyond. The courtroom was filled with tension as prosecutors laid out the evidence in painstaking detail. Every bank transfer, Every offshore account and every falsified document was presented, painting a clear picture of a woman who had meticulously orchestrated one of the most audacious scams in recent memory. Isabella sat poised in the defendant's chair, her expression calm but betraying faint traces of unease. The reality she had avoided for months was now unavoidable, her carefully crafted empire of vampire. Deception was being dismantled piece by piece. Witnesses were called to testify, including the private investigator hired by Sheikh Omar. He recounted the methodical process of tracing Isabella's financial network, explaining how even the most sophisticated schemes left behind subtle traces that could be followed. Bank managers and digital forensic experts detailed the meticulous steps she had taken to obscure her actions. The evidence was overwhelming, leaving little room for doubt. Each revelation chipped away at the persona Isabella had projected, replacing admiration with incredulity and eventually with judgment. Sheikh Omar, who had initially been a victim of charm and manipulation, attended the trial in person. His presence underscored the gravity of the crime and the real human consequences behind the numbers. For him, it was not just about recovering lost funds. It was about restoring dignity, reclaiming control, and sending a message that audacity had limits. The trial proceedings were broadcast in snippets around the world, fueling public fascination. Audiences were captivated by the tale of a glamorous art consultant who had dared to deceive one of the wealthiest men in the world, only to have the law close in with unstoppable precision. The media's focus on Isabella's lifestyle amplified the narrative. Images of her penthouse, luxury cars, and designer clothing were presented alongside court records, creating a striking contrast between her public persona and the reality of her crimes. It became clear that her sophistication and charm, which had initially shielded her from suspicion, had also contributed to the scale of her downfall. The same traits that allowed her to manipulate Sheikh Omar so effectively had now become evidence of premeditation and intent. After days of testimony and deliberation, the verdict was delivered. Isabella Kane was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to repay part of the $5 million she had stolen. The sentence reflected both the severity of the crime and the need to deter others from attempting similar audacious schemes. As she was led away, the weight of her actions became tangible. The life she had built in Miami, glittering, seductive, and seemingly untouchable, had evaporated, replaced by the stark reality of confinement and accountability. In the aftermath, Sheikh Omar managed to recover some of his lost funds, though the emotional toll lingered. The story became a cautionary tale, illustrating the perils of greed, manipulation, and overconfidence. Isabella Kane's name would forever be associated with audacity and deception, a reminder that charm and cunning could only carry someone so far before consequences caught up. Miami's sun, which had once bathed her in opportunity and glamour, now stood as a silent witness to her rise and inevitable fall. Her story became immortalized in headlines, documentaries, and cautionary discussions, a narrative that combined allure, ambition, and the harsh reality that no crime, no matter how sophisticated, escapes justice forever.